Listen. Short story long.
Welcome.
It could take your whole life.
Preach.
Develop clarity.
Second, patience.
If it scared you, you should probably do it.
Whatever you think you don't have, you have something else in its place.
Listen. Short story long.
Go, Woody, go.
Preach.
Listen.
Welcome.
Cindy, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me. I love being here.
I'm excited.
Me too.
So shout out to Casey Adams. He put us in touch.
I know. Such a great connector.
And I'm really excited because I had known, obviously I know your name. I had kind of seen you just in my bit of what I do, paying attention to what's going on in the world.
Sure.
But there's a lot I don't know about you. And when you just quickly read your Wikipedia, it's pretty freaking cool.
Oh, thanks.
And so what I do on here is I purposely don't research too much because I want to just meet like we're meeting for coffee.
Great.
But we're just letting everyone listen to us.
That's awesome.
Where are you from?
Upstate New York,
Got it.
Rochester.
And what, that
Total-
small town?
Oh, blue collar. Like you
Yeah.
grew up, you were Irish or you were Italian, your, family worked in the factory. So definitely like the kid from the wrong side of the tracks. But my life took a very weird turn in that I moved from Rochester, New York to the Fiji Islands.
What the heck?
Like as you do, right?
Why?
So my dad was State Department, total adventurer.
Wow.
So here I show up and like then my childhood transitioned to somewhat of an episode of Survivor because this is not like Fiji water, 5-star resort days. This is back in the day and then went from there and just kept moving. So I moved every year from the 4th grade through my senior year of high school.
How old were you when you moved to Fiji?
I was 9. And then listen, I came back to the U.S. and I hadn't seen TV for 2.5 years.
You
So
were
I'm, like,
literally in an
coming
episode
into-
of Lost.
I'm in I'm in the
my
6th grade and I am absolutely the least cool kid in the world because
Yeah.
I understand no pop culture references or anything else. But it ends up being like, one of your strengths in hindsight.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
What, is that school? Were you going to school in Fiji?
I did, yeah. I mean, one of my classes was how to build an outhouse.
No.
Truly. So I have 2 big brothers. One was already just about to go to college. The other one was in high school. And he actually came back to the U.S. to live with my grandparents. And look, Fiji has evolved tremendously and it's a wonderful culture. I happened to go to a Fijian school.
Yeah.
And so it was just a very different island life.
That is wild.
Yeah.
Okay, so then where'd you go from there? What
So
was
it-
like all through high school?
Okay, so which year? So 4 different high schools.
Yeah.
So high school was, I went from Fiji back to Rochester. I went from Rochester to D.C., from D.C. to Italy.
God.
From Italy back to D.C. So I had this weird like bouncing around of high schools.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Because I've heard about people moving, but it's like usually from like, Arizona to Nevada to.
Okay, so I want you to know, my dad came home and he's like, have you ever heard of Fiji? I'm 9. No,
Yeah.
I hadn't. I like spin the globe in the like family living room and it's all the way on the other side of the world. And I went to the library, I'm totally dating myself, and looked it up. And like the only thing you could find was this video of Fiji having a cyclone. And I was like, we're moving where? Where are we going?
For a 9-year-old, that's devastating.
It was pretty crazy.
Do you remember your mentality during that time? Like, were you like, Dad, I hate this. You're the worst.
I can't remember it. I'm certain I was there because I definitely remember that in the high school.
Yeah.
Like where I had just like broken through from the, new kid to actually having like the acceptance and the friends. And he's like, pack up, we're moving again. So I'm sure I went kicking and screaming. But like I said, hindsight.
Yeah.
Hindsight it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me.
Yeah, that is insane. That is one of those things that I think after high school, every kid should have to travel for a year.
100%.
But I do think that right after high school, for most kids, that's the last thing you want to do. Like, it's so scary, but it's a hindsight thing.
It is.
You
You appreciate it. Well, we exist so much in our little bubble of the way. And like here I am, this kid, like blue collar kid, upstate New York.
Yeah.
Like to have that exposure to totally different way of life, totally different level of privilege.
Yeah.
I think that hardwired me for a lot of what I've done later in life.
That's so true. What about, were you able to even have any interests, any hobbies, any, like, I'm guessing?
You know what's funny is when I went to Fiji, I was like this weird American kid, right? In
Yeah.
this Fijian school. And so I think I felt like it was my obligation as they taught me their culture that I taught them ours. And so like my hobbies were like starting a cheerleading squad and doing a cakewalk and, the most ridiculous things when
Yeah.
I look at it. But like the fun was that, I was just learning and I was sort of trying to share what was mine back with them.
Yeah.
So my hobbies became, learning new things in new environments.
That's crazy. Because now, like, knowing the little bit of your story that I know,
Yeah. It all makes sense.
oh, that was so worth it.
It was so worth
Oh
it.
my gosh. Okay, so
worth
then you get to like high school or
Yeah.
college age.
Yeah.
Do you then like, is it like, okay, now my next bit of my future is in my own hands. What am I going to do with it? Or was it not like that?
Swear to God, like one of my criteria for college was I'm not moving. Yeah. So my senior year, I'd ended up in the DC area and my criteria is I'm going to school in DC.
Yep.
Like I was not going to move again. So I limited like right there. That's what I was going to do. And then, college became relatively tame
Yeah.
because I was stable in an environment. And so, yeah, it was a very different experience. Never mind, I had lived in Italy right before I moved back, so I got it all out of my system when I was in Italy for
Big
high
time.
school.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
college,
that's
I
your-
was like, oh, I've done it all.
You're
Like,
already an adult.
Okay, well, just settle down and study, I guess,
Yeah.
right?
And so did you find yourself gravitating towards anything in college?
I loved, so my dad is such an adventurer. Like to have lived this life, like, clearly I was in a household that embraced, very, like taking risks and chances. And what's funny is I think my brother and I tell the story that if you ever ask my dad for help with homework, he would say like the same 4 words. What do you think? Which was infuriating, right? Because you're like, just help me, or I want to get the A, I want to win the science fair, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And like what he was really doing is hardwiring us with curiosity.
Yeah.
And my curiosity was always like what makes things great, and in particular what makes businesses great. And so I had an obsession, kind of even in college, that I think I wasn't so cognizant of, but a professor recognized in me.
Yeah.
And so she would make me do side projects, like studying what's the best business? Why is that the best business? Like, I was constantly reading about those things, and it really sort of picked my path of where I wanted to apply as soon as I got out.
Yeah. This is amazing. I feel like did you always feel this way? Did you feel this way about your story when you were in your story? Meaning,
Oh, no way.
Okay.
Like, now people ask you questions and you're like, oh, that is why I did that, right?
Yeah.
You don't have that perspective, I think, then. And I think particularly when you think about people who've had these influences that you're not even aware of in that moment. That professor, she has subsequently died, and I'm so sad because
Yeah.
I'd love for her to see, what mark that made.
Did she ever see
that
any
she
of
really
it?
encouraged me. No, she died relatively young,
Got it.
so probably I was still in the early days.
Yeah. Gosh.
Yeah.
That's an important lesson, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what it is, but I think
Yeah.
like those little nudges
Yeah.
for the people that you come across, you know what I mean?
How you value that, right, in the
Yeah.
moment, or you recognize that.
Well, and
and
I
you
think
recognize that she
teachers-
saw it in me. Like she definitely, she made me do, like, it was like a side project, that I was obligated to do this special project with her. And I think that there was a master plan there that I wasn't aware of.
Because I think it's so easy for teachers, like you teach all day long. Some kids are good, some are bad, whatever. It just seems like it'd be so easy to just go through the motions.
For sure.
So to spot a kid and do extra side, I mean, that was extra side work for her too.
No question. Yeah.
It's wild, and the impact that it made.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's cool. Okay, so then take me through what life looked like. Well, how did you do in college? Did you do well?
Oh, yeah, I crushed it.
Did you? That's amazing.
I did. So I'll tell you what I did. So I think always enterprising, right? We had to like earn everything that we got in this family, and and I had this curiosity, always sort of hustling. And so my parents had set aside a little bit of money for me to go to school, and probably wouldn't have paid for it all. But I realized so I said to them, now wait a minute, if I got a scholarship, would you still give me the money? They're like, shit.
Already a
Okay, maybe
businesswoman.
some, right?
Yeah.
Maybe some of it. And so I got a scholarship based on grades. And I can remember, I swear to God, my mom like driving me to a bank. For me, it was to a Charles Schwab, actually, to be specific, to invest in mutual funds when I was in college. So there was that. And I think I had this, like, maybe because I constantly was changing.
Yeah.
I wanted like I was moving to the next thing.
Yeah.
Like I don't like to stand still.
Yep.
And so I got out of college actually early. So I graduated in 3 years.
Gosh.
And it's so funny because again, 2 big brothers, big influences in my life. And I can remember telling him like, oh my God, like I've worked so hard. I'm going to get out in 3 years. And he was like, you're an idiot. I said, what? I thought you'd be so proud of me. And he's like, yeah, we're trying to stay in for 5 years and you're getting out in 3, like a little bit. And his lesson is true too. Like slow down, like enjoy the moment. But I was like, I'm going to go. I'm gunning.
That's funny.
Gunning for the next thing.
What do they do now? Do you mind?
Yeah,
telling me?
So I work with my big brother. He
That's
actually
amazing.
helps me manage the pink ceiling,
so cool.
and my other big brother was my first investor. Both of them invested in me when I start companies,
great.
and they didn't have a ton. They just bet on their little sister.
Yeah.
And now I like to say like,
Yeah,
aren't you
look at me
lucky that
now.
I'm your little sister?
Yeah, look at that 3 years of college did. Who's the idiot now?
They're great. They've been huge. You know why? We moved.
Yeah.
Like in our lives. And so when you move into a new environment and you've got no friends,
Yeah.
like you actually are forced to be really tight with your family.
Yeah.
Like you're the support network, so we're really close.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you graduate college. You ended up getting out in 3 years.
Yep.
And you go out into the world.
Yeah.
You're an overachiever. What did you start to know at that point what direction you wanted to head?
Okay, so that's where this business professor comes in and
Okay.
this weird side project.
Yep.
So in all of my, I had to, learn what it is that makes businesses tick and why one's better than the other. I don't know, I was reading Business Week and Time and all of those things.
Yeah.
I made a unilateral decision that I was going to work for Fortune's most admired company. That was it.
That was it.
I'm going to go learn from the best. That's who I'm working for. And at the time, it happened to be Merck. And Merck is a huge pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
It could have been IBM. It could have been whoever, right, at that moment in time. And then I think my professor had a little bit of anxiety that she'd created. She's like, you need to hedge your bets a little bit. I need you to apply to, 4 or 5. And I was like, nope, they're going to hire me. They weren't hiring when I graduated. I went out and had a sales job in a different company, which I think you should always start with foundationally with sales.
Yep.
7 months later, they were hiring and I got the job. And I called the professor and I was like, told you they were going to hire me. And she said, great, we're going out and you're buying. Here's your first lesson of
That's
the
fair.
paycheck, right?
That's fair.
So that's why I ended up. And
Wow.
and it wasn't about the industry, the job specifically. It was how do I get in and learn from the best? And if I can do that, I'll take it anywhere in my life.
What are the, stupid question alert, what are the metrics for most admired? By staff, by...
Yeah.
What makes them admired?
Oh my God, this is such a great question because the reality ultimately becomes you realize that the reason they're rated Fortune's most admired is that they have an exceptionally good PR department.
Yeah, okay.
Right?
Okay.
And you got in there and they were great on innovation and I'm sure they had wonderful employee feedback and all of those kind of things that would have been calculated the score.
Yeah.
At that time, it's hard to remember back then what those criteria were, but what became so evident to me getting into this culture is while they were exceptional, if you will, in their research, I was just a number.
Yeah.
This was a huge behemoth and I was the hell, I wasn't going to be heard.
Yeah.
I was just a number. It didn't count. And so I realized very quickly that learning from the best didn't necessarily mean learning from the biggest.
Yeah.
It was going to be, trying to stretch myself to people who really pushed me.
Yeah. So what did that look like? I think
Yeah.
that a key, I love these moments because now I've done a bunch of these podcasts, right?
Yeah.
And you start to notice these similarities. And one of them is the way that people treat when things don't quite work out how they planned. And so I think that there's probably a lot of people that came out of college, got good grades, were ready to attack the world the way
Yeah.
that they envisioned it.
Yeah.
It didn't quite go that way. The wind got taken out of their sails.
Sure.
They go not the path they wanted to go.
Right.
How did you deal with that kind of reality shock of oh shit, I can't, they're not going to teach me how to be
Yeah.
an amazing business here?
I'm trying to remember, was there any disillusionment in it for a minute? I think that I think it's about just accepting it at face value, right?
Yeah.
Hey, it's not what I thought it would be.
Yeah.
but nobody's going to take away what the experience I already have.
Yeah.
I talk to people a lot about that, like that fear of the next step is like, oh shit, but what if I give this up? Well, this isn't so great, and it's always your fallback plan.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you take the next step? So for me, like I think there was just clarity that I wanted to learn more. I wanted to be pushed harder. I wanted to be heard and contribute.
Yeah.
And so it was natural, I think, to make the leap. I mean, I went from the prestige, if you will, like, this is the company that had so many applications and you were one of the chosen ones to get the job. And I leapt from there to a company that like none of my friends had ever heard of.
Yeah.
And I can remember like people from Merck calling me the first day I left, and they were at some like, very fancy like launch meeting, and I'm at this like little startup, and they're like, what the hell were you thinking? And, for a minute you go, what the hell was I thinking?
Yeah.
And then it turns out to be the best thing you ever did.
Yeah. What the hell were you thinking? Like, why did
Yeah.
you, how'd you make
I'll
that
tell
decision?
you why. Okay. So oh my God, my brothers, it's these two big brothers.
Yeah.
But one of my brothers had gone to a startup. And when I was inside of Merck, and here I am in this big company and sort of the classical, career track, presumably, he went to a company and he had skin in the game, he had equity, and he was really constantly having to be pushed to do something new. And, it wasn't things he knew how to do. And they'd say, you'll figure it out. And I'm watching him like do this. And I'm thinking, that is incredible. And I had this chance. So they were going to IPO, like back in the day, .com, right?
Yeah.
And they were going to have friends and family round. And man, I ate like rice every day, for $1 for my lunch every day, just to like save up my little bit of money to invest in this friends and family round. And then they IPO'd. And all of a sudden I made a bunch of money.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So that was a piece that, like, that contrast, it was lucky that I had like someone I was watching in a different environment, and an understanding that I wanted to be at a place not only where I was heard, but where like I'm getting a piece of the value that I'm creating.
Yeah.
And so equity became a big sort of thought for me of where that next destination would be. I had to have that. I had to have stock.
That's huge. And I want to ask you this now, because from your perspective now, I'm guessing you probably do this really well. How do you find, I run a business, right? I have 40 employees.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things is finding, there's this thing that you were hungry for where you can say to certain people, figure it out.
Yeah.
And they will.
Right.
And not only will they, but they'll do it probably better than you would have done it.
Sure.
And they'll grow and evolve and love their job more because of it.
Yeah.
And then there's another culture where people have to be told exactly what to do.
Right.
They kind of
Oh,
hate their
God.
jobs.
No.
It's like, and so that's not good for anyone.
No, for sure.
How do you think about that issue, and how do you find those types of people, or do you think those types of people can be made? Like, how do you approach that issue now as a business owner?
I actually look for a couple signs. So like one of the questions I always ask people when I interview them is I tell them to tell me about their favorite business.
Yeah.
And like if it's a stock answer, like they haven't thought about it,
Yeah.
right? They haven't thought about what it is that makes it tick, what it is that makes it great. And like there is if you're wired with that, you go figure it out, right? If you're in an environment you want to make it exceptional, you sort of are looking all around you for what that is. And the other one, and I think this is maybe my most important question of all, is what's the first way you made money?
Yeah.
And because they got to be like you're scrappy, right? What am I looking for? I'm looking for scrappiness. If they come in, they're like, well, when I graduated, I got a job at such and such. Like they never rolled up their sleeves and did the hard work. Like it was pretty cush. And I'll tell you a story about a woman that I hired about 4 months ago. She's in a sales position for me. And, I asked her the question and she said, oh, I babysat from when I was little. And I was like, okay. And she said, but that's not really the first way I made money. I said, okay, tell me. So she said, well, when I grew up, my parents had this incredible garden in our backyard, and my mom would like pick all the tomatoes, put them in pretty baskets, and ask me to bring them to the neighbors. She's like, but when I got there, I sold them to them. I was like, okay, you're hired.
There
right?
you go.
Like,
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
you're
what you were
hired.
looking for. Yeah.
Right? And that's just, there's like that enterprising nature of it,
yeah.
I think makes the people be the problem solvers.
Yeah.
Who figure it out. Like they have a greater ambition than just going in, checking the box, doing the work, waiting for direction.
Yep.
Like they're imagining a bigger possibility.
Yeah. And this question, I want, if you can, I want your honest answer, not the PR friendly one.
Okay.
Can people be changed? Can
No.
you get someone who's always been told what to do but knows something's missing and train them how to fit that culture? Or do you just not even, is it not even really worth trying as a business owner?
People can be inspired, but innately they have that want.
Yep.
That's what you're peeling back, right? That's what you're trying to get to, I think, in those interviews is do they actually have that hunger?
Yeah.
Pat Lencioni used to say, hungry, humble, and smart, right? If you could just isolate in on those characteristics, they may well be plotting today.
Yep.
But they're in an environment that's basically taken all the air out of the room.
Yep.
They've tried to beat them into like one process, one way. This is how we do things. And I think that is the failure of most companies, like, and even big companies, right? Of course, you have to have process for structure and everything else in a company, but like if you're not letting people sort of be individual and you're not tapping into your full potential. So I think they can be inspired, but innately that want for something more is there.
Yeah, I agree. I've learned that it's kind of like what people say about relationships. Like, you can't change people, right? Like,
Of
if they
course.
want to change for themselves,
That's right.
great. But if
Yeah,
you're in
yeah.
it saying, oh, they could be so great one day, you're wasting your time.
Absolutely.
Incredible. Okay, so then after you had the second job, how did that process end?
So that was the beginning of the leap to smaller. Like that was just the beginning to like the leap to bigger pieces of the pie.
Yeah.
And I think what I learned in that was, you know, I had great exposure to all of these people. They were really smart. They were really hardworking. But they weren't smarter or more hardworking than I would be.
Yeah.
And I think that's the aha moment, right? From an entrepreneur's perspective, if you've gone the path that I have, where you've gone from sort of the biggest to, you know, starting it from scratch yourself, is this realization, like, I'm going to bet on me.
Yep.
And if they can do it, I can do it. So that
so
was
good.
really that was the progression, is smaller, smaller, smaller. And I chased innovation, like companies doing really cool things. And I chased like people pushing me to do things that were totally outside of my comfort zone. I sought it out.
Do you think that, I mean, you had to have, because I think one of the bigger problems too that I see in a lot of young people that I talk to is like just that confidence.
Yeah.
Like, you might be just as smart or just as hardworking as the boss or the leader, but you don't know it. Do you think that a lot of that came from moving around early and having that self-sufficiency, or?
I think it came from like an even playing field, you know, of accepting a lot of different people, opinions, everything else, but nobody was elevated over anyone else. Like, we're all just here like contributing. And I think that's the difference. Like, confidence presumes that somebody does it so much better than you do, and like not just accepting like we all got a shot to do it. And I think truly, like, there's no question that my tolerance for risk was greatly increased from all those moves, because if you walk into the room like you're the new kid, you're probably going to be uncomfortable, right? And so I got very comfortable with being uncomfortable. So that took away some of that edge, I think, of taking the shots.
Yeah. What would you say, if you had to give advice to, you know, a young person listening to this, saying, gosh, I want a little bit of that. I want a little bit of what you had, that comfortable being uncomfortable, that whatever. What would you say is the easiest way to go get it? Is it to go travel to a random place and just learn how to fit in? Is it like, how can you do it yourself
I think it's really conscious. I think it's actually putting yourself in that circumstance. Like, I talk to, you know, kids that get out of college, right? And it's like, what do I do? And we actually realize that colleges are shit for teaching us like those possible things you can do in this world. And so they go into environments and they sit back, right? Because they're not so sure, and you're waiting to see like, how is this game played? What am I supposed to do? And like, if you really wanted to test yourself, you'd go to your boss and you'd say, I want to be the best at this. Will you show me how? But you declare it. Like, you declare, I want to be the best. And you'd be surprised, like, if you'll just tell people, will you teach me that? I actually know nothing about this. Will you teach me about this? People will say yes. it's really about that curiosity, I think, that gets you there, gets you to that confidence. Because, I mean, confidence isn't that I know everything. Like, confidence is the courage to take the shot.
Yeah.
That's success, right? It's not actually, no, I for sure don't know anything. I'm constantly seeking learning from other people all day long.
Yeah, that's solid. I mean, I've asked those types of questions a lot. That's a really good, clear, you know what I mean, way to go about it. What's your thoughts on college? College has a lot of, there's a big debate right now, and I think it's like sort of slowly fading. And I think what college is in 10 years will be very different than what we've known it. What do you think about it?
I think we watered it down to like just a general sort of check the box as opposed to like grooming you with a real skill set.
Yep.
And I had a woman come and interview with me not that long ago who said, she was studying entrepreneurship. Like that's a course right now in college. And she said, and then all of a sudden I freaked out. Like, what job is that? Like, what job do I take in an organization? She's like, so I became an accountant. Because I knew what that job was. And she's like, it's the worst thing I ever did because I'm bored out of my mind, because she actually wanted the other. And I think colleges should look a lot more like hands-on training. Like genuinely, what is that? I mean, I think if you look in the UK, a friend who does a lot of this work, like there's really sort of paths, if you will, for particular skill sets. And I think that we'll look a lot more like that and get people into environments, into companies, trying things on for size to see what fits.
Yeah. You think college will change, or you think this current structure has to like just completely disintegrate?
I think the kids will force the change.
Yeah.
Like I think they'll force more sort of preceptorship, co-op type work in college that gives you those experiences. I think the experience of independence and everything else, which is often, most of our first opportunities for independence, is still highly valuable to transition, if you will, into sort of the rest of your life, right? Working and figuring it out. But I think that how that's organized could be really different than classroom learning alone.
Because that's what I feel like kids are doing.
That's how we learn anymore.
Yeah. At all. And I also, that's not even the landscape of the world anymore. I mean, that system is set up to just go into a pre-package, whether it's a factory job or it's a this or it's a that. It doesn't even really work like that anymore.
Right.
But I think that's kind of what's cool. One of the good things about social media and the internet is I see kids kind of doing that online. Like they're listening to this podcast and they're watching this YouTube tutorial and talking about mentorship a lot. Like the amount of DMs I get saying, can I work for you for free? And can I, is like, I think they're kind of doing that themselves or trying. What was your major in college? Did I ask
Business.
you that? Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So when did the day come that you decided to start your own company?
Some moment when I decided, what the fuck am I doing cleaning up other people's messes? So I got into a cycle where like I'd been around long enough that I went into companies and helped them sort of, restructure, get ready for an IPO, whatever. And I'm like, why am I cleaning up other people's messes? Like, I'll go make my own damn mess. This is my problem. I got to clean it up. And that was really just that. The moment was probably the gradual sort of light bulb glowing that, hey, if they can do it, you can do it. And why don't you own the whole piece of the pie when you go do that? And so I called my first company Slate. And it was really like clean slate. I was doing it on my own terms. Good. And it was really like I'd gotten to a place in these environments in which I was gonna do well. Like, like competitive, want to accomplish it. But like nobody was inspiring me to do well. And that was like kind of the hypothesis. Like there's a lot of people out there like me who, they play against their own personal best. They're achievement oriented, but they're in environments that are sucking the life out of them. What if I put them all in a room? Like what can we accomplish together? And that was Slate.
That's amazing.
It was awesome.
How long did that last?
So 4 years.
And what was the actual like sort of product?
So that product we had at the time, a testosterone product for men.
Got it.
At the time, it was the only FDA-approved long-acting, and it was we sort of took it from nowhere to the second most prescribed in 4 years. It was a rocket ship that went like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it went like that.
Yeah.
You know, it was so painful, but that was so fun. Like I look back on that as the good days, right? Of all the pains of like bad forecasting, out of stock, screwing up, you know, all of that is the lessons, if you will, but you survive them.
Yeah.
And when you get the right people around you, you know, you really do flourish.
Yeah.
It was culture first. 100% that was culture first. The right people, the right sort of, you know, environment to be successful. And then we could have taken anything on, and I think we would have succeeded.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. What was the ending of that? Did that one sell?
I sold it. Yeah.
You did.
Yeah.
And that's different from
Sprout.
right?
Yeah.
So then you went on to do Sprout?
Yeah.
Okay, so you did that company. Gosh, this is cool. So you made that company 4 years and sold it.
4 years. 4 years is glamorous. 4 years from when I really had real employees and not just three of us sitting around a desk, right?
Yep.
So we were on the hunt for a product for a little while before that, but 4 sort of real years, product in our hands. What can we deliver with it? And it's because of that, and because I was in this space, right? And sexual medicine, like I love to say, I'm a member of the Sexual Medicine Society. It makes me really popular at cocktail parties.
I bet.
But you know, there's researchers in the world that study men and women alike. So I'm building this company. We look totally different than any other pharma company.
Yeah.
Like we're wacky, and you know, there's just a different. Like you can imagine this band of misfits that I'd assembled. And get a beat on this science. Like I'm watching all the science emerge in women, and I'm watching all the big companies, despite the extraordinary like global market potential, run away.
Yeah.
Which became the signal to run in.
Yeah.
And so I had to sell us. Slate was doing great. You know, here's this profitable business in men that I was going to go from that to zero again.
Yeah.
And it was going to be totally binary. I was going to win big or lose big. And I thought, well, if not us, who?
Yeah.
And like, I'm going to sell it off. So I had to sell that business. I went to all my shareholders. I said, okay, great. I've made you some money. Give some of it back. We're going again.
Yeah.
And I called it Sprout because literally one day before I sold Slate, I sprouted out of it with this other company, sold Slate, went to work the next day on Sprout.
Gosh. And that was fueled 100% by just a new idea.
Yeah.
Like everything was going well, and you're like, well, screw it. I have this new.
Yeah, for
that had
sure.
to be so hard. Talk about confidence. I mean, holy cow.
Or a little bit of crazy.
Maybe. I don't know.
Little bit.
Well, this is the thing. Because of how it ended up, we call it confidence.
Yeah.
If it would have been bad, we would have said crazy.
Crazy,
Yeah.
right? Of course. But it's the big swing. Like I think if I look back over a pattern, like I go from like the cush, the good title, the good position, the good paycheck, and sort of throw it all away for whatever ignites me, you know? And it really did ignite me that at the time there were 26 FDA approved drugs for men. There wasn't a single one for women.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
And
Women
you
go into the
saw-
bedroom with biology too.
Yeah.
There was great science. So at these
Yeah.
conferences I was at, you know, they were presenting all of these new sort of findings for what it is that unlocks desire in the brain for women.
Yeah.
Like in medicine, we say, oh, that works in men. Let's try it on women. Like, okay, well, Viagra's not going to work. That's not what's going on. Desire is in the brain. And so this German company had innovated the science, and I was just watching it. And when they were going to walk away, it made no sense.
Yeah.
It made no sense.
Why
And
were they doing it?
They were walking away because the societal narrative was just too damn hard.
And nobody would touch that?
Women and sexual pleasure, holy shit. Like you're going to dare to press the pleasure button?
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at even when they were getting press, like because they had found this molecule, it's really promising. Like it's extraordinary when you read what was being written.
Yeah.
And I promise you, and I think they would even laugh if they heard me say that, they looked at that and they were like, it's sex. We're German. We're out. We're out.
Not the right guys for the
tackling
job.
This right, but the incredible part of this story is, you know, they'd spent tons of money in R&D, and yet they were going to put it on a shelf.
Yeah.
Like typically in this world, like it would be sold or whatever it would be. And actually, because of the relationships I'd built with this community of researchers, because of Slate and what I'd built there, they basically vouched for me. And they said, she'll do it. And I got it from them for nothing.
Really? Because that was going to be my next question, because I don't know anything about the business,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
how do you get it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. They got royalties, so they did really well in the end, but they just were not going to do anything with it. And, I give them a ton of credit, because that was sort of a big deal for them too. They'd never done a deal like that before, and said, sure. And I think they were like, sure.
Yeah, good luck. Go for it.
Good luck. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so how does that look like? Does that look like you back in an office? I'm guessing a little nicer office at the time, but still back in the office with your group that you assemble,
Oh, yeah.
saying, okay, what's the brand going to be? Is that what it looks like?
It was
Classic startup scene?
Yeah. Oh God, totally. Yeah. Through all the years, dogs in the office and everything else. But so when I sold Slate, my salespeople were so incredibly valuable. They crushed it. And so the one thing that was so important to me in selling it, knowing that I needed to be able to finance taking this other on, is that my whole they kept everybody.
Yeah.
So actually, they kept my whole team.
That's amazing.
From Slate.
Yep.
And so I was kind of out a little bit on an island. Now, of course, so many of them work with me again all these years later. But it was a scientific group that I had to surround myself with, which was a little different. Like, we were in a commercial organization before. Now, all of a sudden, I needed this scientific team. So there was a new band that started to come around.
Yeah. And what was the sort of like mission statement, or what was the like, here's what we're going to do with this?
We're going to change the conversation about women and sex.
Yeah.
That was it. Not a blockbuster drug, wasn't the ambition. The ambition was that if something goes wrong for a guy in the bedroom, we say, biology.
Yeah.
Really important. We should give you options to address it.
Yeah.
Something goes wrong for women in the bedroom, we go, psychology. You should have a bubble bath. And I'm looking at brain scan images in which women's brains light up totally differently if they have this condition, a condition we've known about since the 70s, the same prevalence as ED does for men.
Yep.
And I'm going, no way. No way is anybody patting a woman on her shoulder and telling her, hey, take a vacation. When we know in black and white, science gave us the answer. We just had to get everybody out of their own way.
Yeah. So the main product, or the product, is it the main product or the product?
The product.
Okay, the product is essentially what they call it is Viagra for women.
Yes.
So I have to ask the question, which I'm sure you've talked about it a million times. What does that mean? I know what Viagra does.
Yes.
What does this do?
So it's only context. Like, I think actually the media was so delicious to call it female Viagra. Like, contextually, same kind of game changer for women, the first, but works totally differently. And I think it makes a lot of people really confused. So if desire for us, in the brain.
Yep.
That's where everything turns on. And the way this product works is on this balance. You know, we're very animalistic when we have sex. We actually shut our brain off.
Yeah.
And so you need this like balance of excitement and inhibition to respond to sexual cues.
Yep.
And for 10% of women, it goes off kilter. We don't know why. There's a lot of speculation as to why that might happen. But like for 10% of women, this happens, this biological basis to why they used to want sex. They don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's not like, oh yeah, I just don't want it. It's profoundly affecting their life.
Yeah.
Like, our sexuality is part of how we show up in the world. Relationships are falling apart.
Yeah, of course.
And so it works basically on those chemicals to bring them back to a normal sort of they once knew.
Got it.
It's
And is it
not
like
this. It's not a pill and nymphomania.
Got
And
it.
That's
That's what I pictured. I'm
but
like, what happens when you take this pill?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's sort of the best parallel is kind of what antidepressants do.
Yeah.
Different condition. These are not women who are depressed. But like if you think about something that works on brain chemicals, you don't take a pill and become euphoric.
Yeah.
You take medication that restores you back to where you used to be.
Yeah.
And that's similarly what this is doing for women.
Is it a daily, or how do
Daily.
you? Got it.
Yeah. And then, like the first things that women who respond to treatment say is like, ooh, I had a fantasy. I can't remember the last time. It's like those things, we're wired biologically to like actually have a sex drive.
Yeah.
And that goes off, and like it's like the switch went out. So they really recognize like those signs, or they're like watching the the movie, the
Bachelor.
sex scene, and they're like, oh, that looks fun. Like,
Yeah.
okay, let's click, let's go. And it's really kind of those subtle cues of how we really are wired, if you will,
Yeah.
to spontaneously desire sex.
Yeah. Okay, so I would imagine that as with any new business,
Yeah.
getting people on board and sort of letting your case be known is very difficult. With this, you're talking about something that nobody in the world
Yeah.
would touch. And you're saying, I'll touch it.
That's right.
So what is the process
Oh my God.
of going and convincing the world that you have the cure to this thing and
Yeah.
nobody else has ever?
Right.
Because I could see the first thing being, well, I would have heard about it by now.
Yeah.
There's no way this is the first time ever. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
What's the process of
Oh,
going
the
out and
skepticism is like next level,
I would
right? When I
imagine.
show up on the scene,
Yeah.
you can go to any OBGYN in the country and they will tell you they talk about this every single day, but nobody's talking about it publicly till I'm talking about it publicly. And it's interesting, like the effect. My parents say all the time to me, like, could you have not come up with something in diabetes? Right? Because they're like, shit, if you're not diabetic, you don't have a point of view, but everyone has a point of view
Yes.
about sex.
Yes.
And so it was really sort of mind-blowing to me. And I'll be honest, like a little bit of naivete, because I built this company and like men,
Yeah.
straight line, like it's men and it's sex, and we talk about it in here. And like all of a sudden I do this and I'm getting like hate mail, and like it was really fascinating. And worse, my fate is completely controlled by the FDA and the government. And so, here I am, I've got this science. I sit down with the FDA. What do I need to do? Like there's a roadmap, and it's double-blinded, placebo-controlled. It's all of those things.
Yeah.
Very scientific pathway. Okay, we go out, we do all the work, we meet all the outcomes, and then they deny me. What? They don't approve it.
Why?
They said, well, right? There's a value judgment. So this is what was very clear to me. Like everything comes down to benefit risk, right?
Yeah.
And we think, especially like in science, right, or the FDA, you think that's very objective. It's very benefit risk. And then you realize it's totally subjective.
Yeah.
Because if I don't value something,
Yeah.
then any risk would be too great. And what I felt like was if we just were talking to women who were dealing with this and they were the center of the conversation,
Yeah.
then we'd actually have a very different perspective on why it mattered.
Yeah.
And we would just be looking at the science. And so what ensued was a very interesting public conversation. The company, like Raleigh, North Carolina, I'm based Research Triangle area. And we're a private company. Nobody knows what Sprout is doing. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I decide to fight the government, and Nightline shows up. And suddenly, like, our elevator rides are very different in our building, where people are like, oh my God, I know what you guys are doing on the 10th floor now.
Yeah.
And yet, like, the decision was so clear to me. It was devastating. So we got turned down.
Yeah.
Here I am. That's the end of the company. Like, they decide. And what am I going to do? Like, I'm going to run out of all my money. Yeah. And really, in that weekend, I got this decision on a Friday, the worst Friday of my life.
The worst possible.
The worst. Yeah. And I got it, and I can remember, like, I'd landed in the airport, and I sat down, like, I didn't move. Yeah. Like, felt like time stood still, because I didn't know what the hell I was going to go in and say to all of these, like, my people who blood, sweat, and tears were all about the mission. And I had to face the music, go in, tell them. And, everybody just shell-shocked. We'd done the work.
Yeah.
We'd met it. And this is like, with statistical significance over placebo. It was like very, very clear. Yeah. And yet here we are blindsided. And I went home and like cried it out on that Friday night. And Saturday I got up and I went back to my inbox. And I went back and read all the letters of all the women who'd written me.
Yeah.
Didn't know me, but took the time to write me a letter and said, thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me know I'm not alone. And I thought, what are you doing? And on Monday I went in and said, we're going to dispute the FDA.
Yeah.
And I think the whole group went, we're going to do what? I like to call fighting the government the road less traveled. But I had 13,000 women worth of data.
Yeah.
This was not about the data. This was about, I think, unconscious bias in terms of female sexuality that's threaded all through kind of our societal narrative of how much we value sexual satisfaction and pleasure for women
Yeah.
versus men.
Yeah. Holy cow. Okay, so another piece of advice I want to try to get
Yeah.
from you is for anyone, anyone listening, whether you have a business, you don't, you have a job, you don't, no matter what it is, we've all had those days where you just get that news that
Yeah.
takes the
Oh,
wind
yeah.
out of your sails.
Yeah, yeah.
And I love the way that you said you dealt with it. I mean, how do you think people, I mean, I'll be honest, it happened to me recently. I just had a day, nothing, it
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
even nearly that serious.
Yeah, yeah.
But I had a day where just things did not, this one big thing that I was working on did not go my way at all, just from pure circumstance. And I went home and I was like, gosh, I am so frustrated. And I know I shouldn't be this frustrated. I know I've done 300 podcasts. I should have a tool for this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I don't. And
Never in the moment do you have the right tool, right?
right?
Yeah.
And so that's like, would the advice be to keep some sort of easy way to remember why you're doing what you're doing? Was it reconnecting with why
Yeah.
you're doing what you're doing that helped you get out of it?
100%.
Got it.
100%. You gotta, like, in those moments that like take all the wind out of your sails,
Yeah.
right? You get punched squarely in the face. The only way you're getting back up is if you remember why you did in the first place.
Yep.
Like, failure is just, and that's epic, right? That was like, I'm done. It's just a test to see how much you want it. And like, will you really see it all the way through? And I think, for me, win or lose, take it to the mat.
Yeah.
Go all the way through it.
Where do you find inspiration? Does anyone in your
Yeah.
life remind you that? Or do you have like a favorite podcast you listen to or
Yeah.
a book, or like what reminds you that is true?
I promise you, I get it from my team every day. I get it from women who would write me a letter. I think it's this, you got to make a choice to go through life with a attitude of gratitude.
Yeah.
And I think in going through this, as opposed to feeling alone in it, I like marveled at these people who were sort of coming alongside of me.
Yep.
And they could have been a complete stranger. And that is like, there's nothing more powerful, I think, than being mindful of people who are willing to root for you.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm so fortunate that people root for me, every day. And I think all of us actually have that
Yep.
if we're just cognizant of it. You said something about, kids looking to you for mentorship.
Yeah.
And I think we do look at mentors, like we look up, like who's gonna help me like get there.
Yeah.
And if I looked around, like I don't look like a classical pharma CEO. I never fit the mold. I never fit the part. I was always the outlier in the room.
Yeah.
Like if I looked up, there wasn't the obvious choice. And what it did is it forced me to look to my left and my right.
Yep.
And there are people all around you all the time who will teach you something, who will pull you forward. You just have to recognize it.
Yeah. That's good. What do you think we get wrong the most in this society about women?
We underestimate them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Across the board.
100%.
So everything just feels dampened.
I could give you, and I don't think that is universally true of every human being.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Right? But I think that the narrative actually is woven that is underestimated.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the truth. Like, I had a big aha moment. Like here I am, I'm a woman in a male-dominated industry. I'm getting into positions in which no one sort of fits the part. Like, all of those things. I'm taking on subjects that nobody else is. But like I was gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Right? I was gonna be fine. And then to witness it, like at a big scale,
Yeah.
when I went through this process, and I lived the tale of two sexes, right? I built a company with one of the male drugs.
Yeah.
Now I'm building a company with one of the female drugs, and it's totally radically different.
Yeah.
That really did inform so much of my work now, like in the Pink Ceiling.
Yeah.
It was about advocacy. And I think at the core of all of that is a little bit of a devaluing or underestimation.
Yeah.
Now, for me, that has become, and I talk to female entrepreneurs about this all the time, like that's just an invitation to surprise people.
Yeah.
If you harness it the right way,
Yeah.
it's kind of fun to go in the room and be like, watch this.
Yeah.
Right, watch this.
Yeah.
But so it gamified a little bit for me but it was survival mode.
Yeah.
To do that was because I had to figure out the way to turn it to the positive for me.
Yep.
Because otherwise it was going to actually beat me back, and it was going to cause self-doubt.
Yeah.
Or it was going to cause, frustration. And there's no point in sitting there and being pissed about it.
Yeah.
Like, go, find the workaround.
Yeah,
Go
gosh,
change their
I don't.
mind.
You should. I mean, I know that you do it now, and we talked about it, like that you put out content and do stuff like
Yeah.
that. But like, holy cow, the way that you look at it. Because I agree. I think that's very well put, and I think saying that women are just generally sort of dampened in all these, it makes 100% sense.
Yeah.
I also think, and this is very risky territory for me to say,
Go.
I think anytime that is true,
Yeah.
the side effects of the mental game that can happen does a lot more damage than what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm saying is, once again, please don't write me. I swear I love everybody. Is like, yes, it is unfair in a lot of different areas.
Yeah.
But the accepting that it's unfair does more damage than fighting the fact. And it sounds like you've acknowledged where things are unfair, but you've chosen to use that as to your advantage.
Of course.
And now you've had this wild success, and you're one of the most confident people I've ever met. But you still acknowledge that it's true that things are unfair in certain spaces.
Yeah.
But for you personally, you could have very easily sat at home
Yeah.
and said, it's unfair out there.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. I'm going to be a martyr and just,
I'm going to surprise you and go, and also at the risk of people being pissed.
yeah.
That's a problem right now,
Yeah.
actually, in this discussion, is the swirl, if you will, of railing against it.
Yeah.
Like, well, you're, like screaming about it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go out and do something about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And I think it really is like, when I went through this process, I met with my critics as much as my supporters.
Yeah.
Because it's important to hear what they say too. And I think if you'll do that, if you'll accept the reality as it is,
Yeah.
there's a great power in that. Because as soon as you've like sort of gone, okay, well,
Yeah.
not on my watch,
Yeah.
like I'm going this way. Like
Yeah.
if that's my barrier, okay, I acknowledge that's a barrier, but I'm going to find the workaround, as opposed to like, I'm just going to scream about this barrier and I'm going to give up
Yeah.
because of that barrier.
Yeah, that's so important. There's just not enough. I think social media has made it easier and louder and more in your face to have complaining be a thing,
Yeah.
a job.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that people like you that are actually doing something about it out in the world and in very uncomfortable situations
Yeah.
and conquering your fears and doing all that stuff is so important.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's not enough people like that speaking. There's a lot of people yelling, this is
Yelling.
unfair.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
I go to a lot of meetings where there's a lot of that, and I'm like, yeah, but look what we can do, and look at this sort of fun in that. And I'll give an example.
Yeah.
So, you might imagine that me showing up in pink, raising money, was not going to get the big VC checks, and by the numbers, I wasn't going to. I already knew that 2% of all venture capital goes to female-founded companies. But it's fun today for the guys who passed me over. Like, it's fun to pick up the phone and be like, hey, remember what you would have made had you
Yeah.
invested
Oh
in
my
me? Yeah. So you really probably should look at this. Or them call me up and be like, Cindy, can I get in on that deal? And I think there would be, honest to God, a mindset that would say, no, like, fuck you.
Yeah.
You're not in.
Yeah.
Mine is like, come on in.
Yeah.
You'll never make this mistake again. And that's the change.
Yeah.
Like when I invest in, I talk about one of my founders all the time. She's going to kill me. But Jessica is like 5'10". She's blonde. She's Texan, and she is a brilliant engineer. And when Jessica walks into the room, she's underestimated.
Yeah.
She's young, and the beauty of investing in Jessica is that she is going to crush it.
Yeah.
She will sell her company for hundreds of millions of dollars, and the next time, like the 5'10" blonde walks in the room, like the room that is largely blue and gray suits today.
Yeah.
Is going to reach for the checkbook.
Yeah.
And
That
that's
has to be the best feeling in the world.
how you change it.
Yeah.
Like you don't sit in your frustration. You move it forward.
Yeah. Gosh darn it. That's good. And I love the fact that you wear pink. You wear pink
Yeah,
all the time?
always.
That's your thing, right?
Always.
So like it's not even like you walked in here in a gray suit, a gray, what do you call it? What are those things that Hillary Clinton wears?
Pantsuit.
Yeah, pantsuit. And you're like, hello, how are you? Like you're owning
The femininity.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I think that is a big piece too, because certainly, like I was told, you got to conform, you got to fit in. Like if you want to be the leader, you got to look the part. And, there's great power in your femininity. The pink, really, I will tell you, there is a healthy irreverence to it. And that is pink is perceived as weakness.
Yeah.
And I think it's a strength. My pink is moving from underestimated to unapologetic. I like pink. I always liked pink. And when people used to say, "Oh, that's cute, the little pink pill,"
Yeah.
I thought I have a choice to make here. I'm either going to go the total opposite
Yeah.
in some idea that if I do that, they'll take me seriously,
Yeah.
or I'm going to show up in blazing hot pink and say, "Hey, guess what we're going to talk about today?"
Yeah. Gosh. Do you read a lot?
God, is my father's greatest disappointment in me that I don't.
Where do you get this like solid, like this is what I think. Once again, when you look at a bunch of people that are successful, and by successful, of course, I mean any measure of success.
Yeah.
So much of it is where you choose to fall on these little issues, day after day after day
Choice.
after day, right?
Yeah.
How you look at what's happening to
Sure.
you. And you seem so insanely like grounded and leveled, and you know what I'm saying?
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
course.
That's really nice. I mean, look, I get to spend time with people like you. I have a cool life. Like I have a fascinating opportunity. I get to spend time with founders who've never proven it before, but have these, radical ideas that they come in with. And I think that, always sort of open to that learning and everything else keeps you in a really steady way. That's my reading. My reading is these conversations and learning from other people all the time.
Yeah, that's good. You really should start a podcast. And
You're going to help me.
I will help you with whatever, absolutely anything you need. I'll show up with the microphones. I want to hear your conversations.
Oh, thank you.
So then you went back and got approved by the FDA.
I did. It was a very public battle. In the last scene of it, they assembled all of these, scientific experts, and it was great. There's the first. It's almost like going to the Supreme Court, not literally the Supreme Court,
in my
but
head, that's what I'm
of
seeing.
the FDA. It really feels like that. Honest to God, they sit around on a panel, they listen to all of your data, they make a recommendation to the FDA, and for me, it's the first time the world really got to see all of the data, and then the public has a chance at the microphone too.
Yeah.
It was wild, and they literally vote by an audience response system. There was a panel of 24 people who pressed a button and it went on a huge screen. And I can remember I was holding my phone and it was like this because I was going to take a picture of it. This was it.
Yeah.
Right? And overwhelmingly, they voted to approve the drug. Science won, but women won big that day.
And that had to be, I bet when you walked back through the doors of your company that day.
It was incredible. I'll tell you what I did though, and not to the chairman of my board wasn't so happy about this idea. But the night before we went, in this very stressful, day in court, so to speak, I threw a victory party.
Yeah.
And he was like, "What are you doing? Everybody needs to be in the room. We need to go to bed early. We need to be ready." And I said, "You know what? Whatever happens tomorrow, we've won."
Yeah.
We didn't leave a single thing unturned.
Yeah.
We prepared. We've done everything that we could have possibly done. And now it's really in their hands to make a scientific decision.
Gosh, that's what I'm talking about. That's that groundedness. That's that knowing how to look at things right. Holy cow. Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and brag for you because I'm guessing you won't do it.
Oh, I've learned to.
Okay, good. So the company does very, very well.
Yeah.
You sell it. What's the price tag?
$1 billion up front with royalties on the back end.
That's what I like. Yes. Holy cow. So how long after the approval by the FDA was
2 days. That was a big week for me.
Holy cow. That was 2 days later?
Yeah, I'll tell you what happened. So this big vote happened, and the FDA doesn't literally have to give the decision the next day. So that big vote of all those scientists happened on a very public stage, and all the big companies were like, oh my God. this woman in pink is going to do it.
Yes.
And so they came courting, and we got to a deal. And so 2 days after the literal approval, we announced the sale of the company.
Oh my God.
Yeah, $1 billion.
Okay, that's the most incredible thing I've ever heard. This is a movie.
Yeah. Oh,
Are you working on a movie?
Wait. It's not $1 billion happy ending.
What happened?
So I sold it for $1 billion.
Okay.
The idea is I'm staying, my team's staying, right? That's mattered a lot to me. It mattered to me in my first transaction. Like, we were going to build this great women's health company. And then the company that bought us went sideways. And like at the time they bought us, they were $2.60 a share. They traded down to $8 a share in the next year. And their business just went sideways. We were the last thing in.
Yeah.
And like they couldn't deal with it.
And your plan was to stay on board and
100% and grow it. Like that was a condition of it. And you know, here's Mama Bear. Like I'm getting no information and I am pissed.
Yeah.
And so I was invited to leave, I like to say.
yeah, that's a good. I like that.
And I thought, okay, you got to check yourself, right? They bought my company for a lot of money. I'm the founder. There's friction.
Yeah.
But at least my people are there.
Yeah.
And then within 3 months, they were all gone.
Gosh.
And they put it on the shelf.
And so that was a pretty devastating time.
Devastating.
Yeah.
Because we didn't fight that hard. You know, this was so much who I am.
Yeah.
I mean, everything I think I work on is so much a part of me and a piece of sort of who I am that it was just to sit on the sidelines and have women who we'd fought so hard for not have access to this.
Yeah.
And then you gotta pick yourself up again, right? Like you gotta go back. I swear to God, I was like probably in some retail therapy, like at a store, and I saw these, you know, freaking hot pink, like you could see from outer space. They were so bright, heels across the store, and I walked over to them, and I think like their thing was shocking pink or something was the color, and I thought, what the hell are you doing? Like, put on these shoes and go back to work.
Yeah.
And, you know, the work was not only the pink ceiling of how do I sort of pay it forward, get women to outcomes like mine faster than I got there, give these overlooked ideas a shot.
Yeah.
But it was, why don't I knock back on their door and say, listen, you're not going to do anything with it. Give it back.
Yeah. That's what you did?
And you know they laughed. They were like, we just paid you $1 billion, bye. And I was like, yeah, but we wrote a contract in which you promised to do certain things and you're not doing them.
Yeah.
So I'm going to need you to start doing them. Like, I don't know, educate the market, make it available in pharmacies. I would secret shop. I'd like go to pharmacies to see if I could get it. I couldn't get it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they were distracted. They weren't really paying attention to me. So I sued them.
And you got it.
In exchange for dropping the lawsuit, I got it back for nothing, but I kept $1 billion.
Oh my gosh, it is a happy ending. It's such a happy ending.
It is.
Oh my god.
But you know, the sad part is the gap in between. Like, what's human nature? So the day we got approved, biggest news story in the world.
Yep.
Then it goes to deafening silence.
Yep.
And so what do you do as a human being? Like, if you're like, something's wrong there. So now I've got it back, but we've got to dig out from all of this like misconception. But that's okay. We can handle it.
Yeah.
10% of women need this. And actually the first day we turned it on, women got on the product.
Gosh.
It's just that easy, right?
It's just that easy. Okay, so then you kind of said it, but clarify for me what you do now.
So today, I actually run that company, Sprout, that has Addie.
Oh, so it's still called Sprout and everything.
It's called Sprout.
Okay.
I got it back. All my shareholders got it all back. We got to keep the money. I will
Incredible.
tell you, the path to more money was the lawsuit.
Yeah.
We had a contract. We had these ideas on royalties. And this speaks volumes to like how you got to find the right people to invest in you too.
Yeah.
Not a single one of my shareholders voted against us taking it back because they knew like we'd gotten a big check. This was about getting it right for women. That's what we set out to do in the beginning. Yeah. And like now we work on a campaign called Right to Desire. We want to talk about the product. We just talk about why the hell aren't we talking about this?
Yep.
Why do women not own sexuality way beyond reproduction all the way to pleasure?
Yeah.
And it's caught fire. Like, it's really fun to watch that. So I do that. I run that because it came back in under the pink ceiling. And the pink ceiling was my interim work and continues to be my work of looking for, you know, those breakthrough firsts for women.
Yeah.
Female-led, female-focused, and often, like, products that I think have real sort of social impact.
Yeah.
And we've got now 11 companies under our umbrella, including Sprout.
That's incredible.
It's awesome.
Gosh, how cool. And that's all based in North Carolina?
It is. We have a pinkubator.
Oh my gosh,
You gotta
it's a
come see the pinkubator.
I will come there anytime.
Everything's like bros and hoodies and craft
Yeah,
beer. We
you're
have
right.
like beautiful like pink chairs and rosé on tap.
I'm coming to the pinkubator.
Please.
Gosh, that's cool. Okay. This is another thing quickly that we talked about before we started that I'm curious of because, and I battle with this. So this is
Yeah.
partly my own advice for me personally, and hopefully the listener gets something out of it. Building a business versus putting yourself out there, creating content,
Yeah.
talking about building a business.
Yeah.
I think social media has, and I'm not going to be a hater here, even though it's easy to do. Social media has started to reward
Yeah.
the perception of things.
Yeah.
And so you find a lot of young people working really hard on looking like something and not actually being something. I myself battle between, I know the value of putting out content and building an audience. Also, my main passion and concern is building a really good, well-run, happy business.
Yeah, sure.
How do you plan to, or how do you balance those things? I mean, you've now built
Yeah.
billion-dollar companies, you've done all this stuff, and now there's this whole new world of, hey, you need to start a podcast. You need to
Right.
be better on Instagram. You need to, you know what I mean?
Oh, all of those things are so true.
I'm
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
But how do you balance that?
You know, I thought I had the perfect answer for you, but I don't know that I do. Like I'm very tangible, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm really tangible about that value. Like what is value that I'm kind of like a built to sell person. So I like, how do I take something, build it, and have somebody else take it from me,
Yeah.
for some amount. So I think in that regard, I'm very wired for that version of it as opposed to content. But I think the more fundamental in what you say about rewarding sort of like the way it looks versus the actual is fuck the unicorn, be the workhorse. And it will always pay you back. Like all of this, I'm going to go out, I'm going to declare my greatness before I ever execute. Just put your head down, do the work, right? Create real value in whatever way, real value because it connects with people in some way. But don't like start off with this idea. That is like the fatal flaw in my mind right now in entrepreneurship, and like so ridiculous.
Yeah.
You got to roll up your sleeves. You got to do the work. And if you do it, like I feel like I'm a living example, the reward will come.
Yeah.
And that should be your focus. Your focus should just be about delivering value.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's why I think that for someone like you, if you do start a podcast, if you do start doing content, it's going to be good. Sure, it might take a little bit to figure out, but you have the years and years of experience and what you stand behind and all this stuff.
The fun for me is I'd have to learn something totally new.
Yeah,
like
you're
you're
right.
so much more qualified to answer that question than I am. Like
Yeah.
I've built really sort of, product-based businesses for the most part.
Yeah.
And often patented because I like that too.
Yeah,
That ups
yeah.
my value.
Yeah.
My margins are good, but this is a whole new world, but fun for me.
Yeah.
Like to be able to go out and learn that too. And the only objective in the outset of that would be to create real value.
Yep. Yeah, that's why, that right there is why it's important to hear that from you, because you just hear too much from people who don't really know.
Yeah.
And so to actually hear it from someone who has done it, but also sees the value in content is very important, because it's, once again, the same way the loudest people in the world are complaining and not actually doing something about it.
Yeah.
A lot of the loudest people in the world are giving advice and not actually doing anything about it. You know what I'm
So
saying?
true.
So that's like a weird phenomenon we have right now.
Actually be discriminating about who you're taking your advice from.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, big
actually be discriminating about that.
Yeah.
And I think we should value real sort of execution against something.
Yeah. Big time. Okay, here's my final two questions.
Go.
Number one, you can hop in a time machine right now. You can go anywhere in your life and tell yourself anything. Where do you go and what do you tell yourself?
my God, this one's so easy. I go back to myself in my 20s and say, have more sex.
Really? Were you uptight when you were in your 20s?
I have to say that. That's what I
just living
do
on
for
brand.
a living.
Yeah.
What would I do? You know what? I would go back, and this is so classical, but I might do this for any little girl in the world.
Yeah.
I'd go back and I would tell her, perfection is the enemy of your potential.
Yeah. Did
And
you do that a lot? Did you like try to?
Perfectionistic.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure, right? Like I wanted it right. I wanted to do that. And the truth is, over time, you learn it's just slowing you down.
Yeah.
It's just slowing you down because you then get caught up in that, like, I'll only make one perfect decision
Yeah.
as opposed to making 10 decisions. And you know what? 3 of those are going to probably be pretty damn good.
Yeah, yeah,
and if
yeah.
7 aren't, like, you're still ahead by 2.
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
you're one perfect decision.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe a lesson for all of the young us who want to be so, like, we're so scared unless it feels.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, here's the last one. You can prescribe anything
Oh, shit.
to
Yeah.
the entire world for 30 days, and they have to do it.
Have more sex.
There you go. That's good. That's
That is really good,
That's
actually.
good. That's good.
That is my prescription
Yep.
to the world.
Yep.
It really is. There is like, there's so many scientific reasons for that. And it really just, I think, is get you out of your
I
own
think it'd be a
way.
happier place. The world would be a happier place.
For sure.
If everyone just calmed down and had
For sure.
sex. I agree. Okay. That was incredible. So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for
Thanks for
coming on and
having me.
sharing. Thanks for doing what you do. Thanks for literally, like, I'm sure you know this by now and you've gotten quite a few letters, but you are one of the few people that what you're doing has, I think, an impact way beyond just your industry and just what you're selling and just the people that you work with. So just, I don't know, if you ever question it, call me. If you ever have one of those tough days, call me. I'll give you a little booster.
I appreciate that.
Of course. Thank you.
Take you up on it. Thanks.
Guys, if you like that and you want to see more like it, as well as vlogs, other web series, and all the random stuff that I'm doing here on YouTube, don't forget to click that subscribe button. You won't regret it, I promise.